Hey, folks, in this interview, I'm sitting down with my friend, Mr. Steve Simon, also known as the Passionate Photographer. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. You know, in the lore of This Week in Photo, there are some people that can be called, I guess, historic, maybe is the word, or, you know, one of those words that people that are sort of etched in the annals of TWiP history and TWiP lore. One of those people is Steve Simon. Steve Simon has been on TWiP since the very beginning of the show, and we've come full circle. Steve Simon's back on the show now to talk about some projects he's got going on. Steve Simon, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Fred, I've missed you. It's been way too long. Holy cow, I can't believe it. And you're right.
You've been in New York hanging out, right?
I'm in New York hanging out. You're right. I think that first TWiP episode was in 1873, yes. And it was at Macworld when they used to have Macworld.
That's right. Yeah, you remember that.
I remember it well.
Yes, I was thinking 1492 because I remember something about Columbus or something. But yeah.
Anyway, you're right. We're kind of founding daddies or fathers.
Yeah. This show would not be what it is, or probably not even around had it not been for you. So,
but what's been amazing is kind of what you've grown it into, which is pretty exciting. I mean, you can tell how passionate you are about photography on this show, and that just comes across.
I'm a nerd.
Week, so I try not to miss it.
Yeah, because you're not busy at all, Steve. You have nothing to do.
No. Like everybody. I mean, look, when you're a photographer surviving on your sort of photography with your camera in one shape or another, it's just, you never do punch out, which is fine. I mean, I don't really want to. I love it. I want to always be with camera and looking for the next picture. But as you know, I mean, it's not all photography. There's a lot of stuff we have to do to survive. And I have a 4-year-old, and that he's pretty demanding.
Yeah. Oh, come on. 4-year-olds are easy. They take no care. All you got to do is put a bowl of food out for them and maybe some water, and you're good. Right?
Yeah, a little bit of Paw Patrol, and they're set. You're right.
Exactly.
That's all they need.
At least you don't have to worry about LOL dolls or anything like that. So trust me. But this is what I wanted to have you on for, aside from catching up. But it's this thing. Let me bring it back to me. This book here. How's the light on that? Oh, yeah, you can see it good. This is The Passionate Photographer. This is, let's see, what did you say it was? Revised and remastered by Steve Simon. This is look at this. This is a book. This is the
solid.
real.
It's pretty solid.
You don't get atoms these days. Everything's, PDFs or online or whatever.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Tell me about the book.
Yeah,
tell me about it.
Well, I mean, the book originally came out in 2011, and like I always used to say, I mean, I hadn't read it, but it got good reviews, and it had got some good reviews, and obviously I had to reread it to rewrite it. And, a lot of the stuff, because the Passionate Photographer book was really born from my process of photography when I started, at 11 years old, and just continued, in a career in photography, mostly in documentary and photojournalism. So it really was kind of my experience in a way that I thought could help other photographers. They could sort of take some of the things that worked for me, and they'll work for other photographers. So the book was, I guess, pretty successful as far as these kinds of things go. And when this new publisher showed interest and wanted to do it, I said, yeah, why not? It's time for a revised reboot, if you will, with the brand, The Passionate Photographer. And so I kind of left everything that was still relevant in it. And a lot of it was, I mean, it's not a very technical book, so a lot of the stuff was pretty relevant. But, some of the technical things like flash powder had evolved into strobes.
different formula for flash powder.
Exactly. And, safety measures. We didn't have safety rules back then. But, so I was able to kind of update some stuff, which really kind of made it pertinent and really, I hope, valuable for anyone who's interested in photography these days.
I love it, man. Congratulations on redoing that and having another publisher do it. The book is fantastic. The quality is a hardcover, this book is gonna be in my collection forever quality. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean that's the one thing. As a photographer, I've always believed that books are really kind of the final way to encapsulate a project. Maybe not so much in this kind of a book as kind of a how-to book, but if you're doing a photo project or a portfolio, to have that hard copy book. I mean, the reality is, and we don't know what the future holds, and a digital photo is kind of something that may not be around forever, but we do know the sort of longevity of books and paper and prints, and that's something I guess we can count on. In 100 years from now, how have we backed up our work? And still today, maybe the most archival form of a digital photo might be a print. Because the inks last for 200 years. So yeah, it's nice to have a book that'll be there for hopefully a long time to come.
Well, let's talk about the book. So the passion. Let's talk about start with the brand, because which came first, the Passionate Photographer brand or the Passionate Photographer book? Because you do workshops under the same brand, right?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I basically took the brand because it sort of made sense. I mean, I think that anyone that is out there that is listening to this and interested in photography probably falls under that umbrella of passionate photography, because, I mean, it's a wonderful thing to find something like photography that you could just, there's never enough time to devote to it. You're always kind of reading up on it when you're not doing it. It's not easy, and you're always striving to get better at it. And it's really a lifelong pursuit that, I think for a lot of photographers just keeps them alive. I mean, there are a lot of photographers doing amazing work, in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And, photographers traditionally, when you look around, some of the great ones have lived a very long time, because I think photography plays a role. I mean, it just keeps you engaged with life, and that's the beauty of it. So, yeah, the Passionate Photographer was a natural kind of moniker. I felt that way, and I thought, the people that want to read this stuff are going to be passionate too.
And who's the book for? I mean, obviously photographers, but what kind of photographers?
Yeah.
Is it beginners? Is it intermediate? Is it everyone? Is it
Yeah.
non-photographers that are interested in learning about photographers? Who's your avatar for the book?
I mean, I don't want to sort of say everyone because I don't really mean it. I really do mean it could be for everyone. I think it's for anyone that has an interest in photography, because I think it's written in such a way that I've been told it can inspire, because, I'm just so passionate about this. I'm more excited about photography than I've ever been in my life. And I've been doing this a very long time. And that passion fire just keeps growing and growing. So because a lot of the content is more about sort of the process and sort of the intellectual thinking behind, what we're doing as photographers, and the idea that, the more personal you make it, the more universal it becomes and the stronger it becomes, because as an artist, to communicate, the more personal you're willing to get, in my experience, the stronger the work is. And these are some of the messages I think that can resonate with someone who's been doing this a long time and needs a spark to sort of get them back to that innocence of vision they once had when they got into it, where, they were so excited about it. And if you happen to be a beginner wanting to get into this, I think it really can accelerate your progress just by, learning from me, doing, mistakes I made. You'll make more mistakes, of course, but you can avoid some big ones and maybe sort of fast track your development as a photographer.
Yeah, and that's you hit on a key point there, and that's a perfect segue, because you talked about just sort of your personal work and developing your personal style and that sort of thing. One of the chapters, I guess in the beginning of the book, you talk about the power of personal projects. I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think for a lot of people out there, the more that I talk to people, that seems to be the missing link towards that bag of expensive gear that you bought because you just had to have the same stuff that Steve Simon shoots with, and actually producing something that you're proud to show people. It's having that map from, I got the car, but now where do I go? Can you talk about that a little bit, the personal project and the importance of it?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me as a photographer, I went to journalism school, I did photography, and then I had a career, as a newspaper photographer. But really for me, it was the personal project that really elevated my work and my process and my thinking and my passion and excitement for photography, because I was able to lock on to certain projects, be it one of my first projects called Healing Waters back in the day, with this little lake in Alberta where I was living at the time that had healing powers, and I'd go and I'd document this. And once I started to have a set of pictures developing, it really made me understand that, wow, I've got something here that I could work even further, and really sort of tell people a story that maybe only I can tell. First off, it's coming from my personal perspective. I'm very much interested in what's going on here, and I could communicate it in such a way through photography that it becomes kind of a unique body of work. And any kind of personal project, be it personal in the sense that it might be your own family or something you have a contact with, but more about sort of, kind of going inward in that if you can find one specific situation, and it could be a street corner that you keep going back to over and over again, and it's a place that for whatever reason you're attracted to and you want to get to, and you start documenting it, and you start to get a few images that you really like, and that just pushes you further to peel the onion to the point where you've got a set of images that is really kind of unique and powerful. And it may just be from one specific corner where there's a lot going on, or just one idea that you have that you could dig deep into. For me, it allows you to kind of, shoot. If you took the same picture, if there are two that are too close to each other, you have to put the weaker one aside and move forward. And that whole process of working on a personal project, to me, is the most elevating experience for a photographer, where they can start to see the progression of their work. But finding that project is not easy necessarily. So you kind of make it easy on yourself. You want to go to a place that you like to go to and see if there's maybe some project ideas there, just in your own personal life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, there's so much to this, right? Because there's the passion, the passionate photographer, there's assigning yourself personal projects to get out there. And then there's just the idea of, how do I get good? Like you touch on the topic or the subject of the 1,000 hour rule, right? And what that is, for people who don't know, is that, I don't know who said it, but
yeah, it's actually 10,000 hours, but for you, it was only 1,000
Did
hours.
I say one? I meant 10.
You did, but you're a prodigy. Come on. I mean, you don't need 9,000 extra hours.
Well, it depends on how close you are to a black hole. I'm just saying.
Right.
But you're right. 10,000 hours. So tell me about that. I mean, is that a hard and fast rule, or is it, if you're more talented, does that hour number go down to 1,000, or if you're less talented, it goes up to 30? How does that work?
Yeah, no, I think it definitely can be accelerated in the digital realm, just because we have, such quick access to our results. But I think, Malcolm Gladwell might have made it popular, and he cites different studies that if you do anything, for 10,000 hours, you're going to become an expert at it. And in the book, I talk about going through a volume of work, and I cite Ira Glass, who did this really interesting piece about, it's like any creative person. It takes a volume to get to sort of a tipping point, and photography is no different. And you're going to make work that is not as good as it can be. But persistence and volume, as a photographer, you go, you shoot, you come back, you assess, you learn from your results, you go back and you make things better. And the idea of concentrating that process on a single project accelerates the progress, mainly because you're focusing on one small area. So you go back, you shoot, you make 3 strong shots, you go, and it's like anything. There's no substitute, no matter what the talent, for the work. If you spend an hour a week, in 52 weeks, you'll have 52 hours worth of work, and chances are you've got a screaming hot portfolio in that. So it's just a question of sort of getting out there and doing it, but finding a focus for your work, because whatever style you're going to develop is unique to you, and that is revealed in the volume of work that you do. And if you concentrate your effort on a specific personal project, you're gonna see that style a lot sooner, and it'll be a lot more obvious, I think. But one other thing I just want to mention is this sort of obsession sometimes people have with this style idea. A style isn't something you can really contrive. I mean, there's certain techniques, but it really is just the way you do things, and it's an organic, natural sort of progression for the way you see the world, and that's going to be your style. And you may not even see it yourself, but Fred or I, it'll be a lot more easier for us to sort of see it. You're too close to it.
Yeah. What about the, I'm looking at your book now, you have step 9, action plans, setting goals and creating strategies. Yeah, and I'm all about setting goals and creating strategies, or I'm a list guy, right?
Yeah.
Talk me through that. What does that mean in the context of the passionate photographer?
Well, I just think that, when you have a plan, it's easier to kind of follow a certain direction that will kind of get you to where you want to be or where you want to go. So I talk about different kinds of goals, and you might have equipment goals of maybe using certain equipment, or maybe being able to get certain equipment, maybe looking at what you have now, seeing what you're not using, getting rid of stuff, and just sort of streamlining your sort of technical process. Maybe your goal is, a big part of it, of course, is that you have to be able to put out the very best work. So if you're this great photographer, but you're having difficulty editing, and there's a whole chapter in there on editing, which I think is very important, because, as a teacher, as a workshop leader, I think that often I see students who just don't have the confidence. I mean, they're great photographers, but they're still unclear as to which is the best picture and why. And I think that also is the volume and consultation with other photographers, be it online or in person at these courses or workshops. And then there's the idea, and this was a more recent book that I read called The One Thing, which really resonated with me. And it was, as a photographer, as someone who's a professional business of photography, rather than try and multitask like we always are doing constantly, but instead set some time for sort of the one thing that you can do that will have the biggest positive impact on your work or your business. And, so it might be just, taking the time and finishing that project, or it might be, taking a week and organizing your archive, or building your website, or working on your blog, or whatever that might be. So the idea of sort of the big ticket items, rather than have them as one thing on your to-do list, really kind of focus in, schedule some time, find the time, and just work it. And if you're able to do that, concentrated effort on sort of the big ticket items, I think you can really start to see progress as a photographer, or whatever it is that you're doing. So that's all part of sort of the planning idea.
That's sage advice, Steve Simon. What about the this is an interesting question. Just the all of us, most of us are human, right? Some people are questionable, but most of us are human, and life happens. Things, we can't control it. Things are thrown at us, good and bad, and that affects our mood, that affects our creativity, that affects our plans, good and bad, best laid plans get impacted, right? So from a photography standpoint, what's your guidance on, should photographers embrace and share and channel the good and the bad that's happening in their lives into their photography? Or should they keep the photography sort of segregated away and say, you know what, that's my happy place, assuming the thing that's happening in your life is negative, right? But yeah, that's my happy place. I'm going to go take pictures of roses and flowers and do long exposures of beaches and stuff, and keep it away from this sort of depressing stuff on the other side. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. I think that, photography is a lot of different things for different people. I think for a lot of us, it's a form of therapy. So if your life is sort of going in one direction, photography is a chance to kind of be in the moment with your camera, wherever you are, and just focus on whatever it is that's in front of you. And that's, again, part of the power of photography. But as an artist, when I say the more personal you make it, the more universal it becomes, I think if you're willing to share maybe some of what you're going through, and if it's positive, that's fantastic. If it's negative, the art, the photography that you communicate and create might not only be good for you, in terms of what you're going through, but it also might help other people, because I still believe that, photography has the power, for positive change. I mean, we see it a lot in journalistic photography. You can look at the World Press Winners of the Year. I mean, they point at, they shine the spotlight on these sort of crazy, terrible things that are happening, but they're important, and it could make a difference. So, it really is an individual sort of question to sort of ask yourself. But is there a way that you can sort of channel what you're going through your photography? And, it might just be the opposite. You may decide, I'm going through all this crazy stuff that's negative. I just, as you mentioned, want to photograph on this positive stuff. And that could be very powerful. And that might even bring you out of the funk that you're in. So, I think photography can be the answer for a lot of us, just because, we're passionate about it for a reason. It allows us to be in places that we wouldn't normally be, but for the excuse of our camera. So, I've heard it said, the camera is your sort of ticket to a life that maybe you're not necessarily predisposed to, but it allows you in, and you can really explore, engage, and experience. So, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and looking at the shots in your book, it's like your camera is your passport into different areas, even of the world, right? That without it, you're just kind of some guy wandering around with a camera. People instantly know that, oh, he's here to take pictures without a word spoken, right?
That is true. It does give you a purpose when you travel, for example. Not only do you want to, if you have no plans to kind of, publish the work in any form, at least to kind of show people kind of where you've been. But better still, at the highest levels, photography can allow people to kind of feel what it was like when you were there photographing. And that's kind of what the passionate photographer is striving for. There's no limits to how far we can go with this thing as long as we just keep moving forward with it. And that's why, again, that project, the concentrating your effort on one project, is something I would definitely encourage, all the viewers out there to consider and try and find, because it's been my experience and the experience of many other photographers that I know that has been the kind of springboard to success, be it, business or even just personal artistic satisfaction.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right. I have a final question for you, or a second to final question for you.
Sure.
Just around the idea of photojournalism versus street photography. This is a question that I've had in my head for a while. You're a photojournalist. What's the difference between photojournalism and street photography? Steve Simon, you set the record straight once and for all for us.
Yeah. Again, I think that these things are labels, and they're somewhat arbitrary. Yep. We like to be able to file things in drawers. My definition of the street is really just any place that's kind of outside your private domain. So where people are, and there's public access to, that's the street, be it a little village in some small place in Mozambique, or New York City, 57th and 5th. They're both, as far as I'm concerned, the street. Photojournalism, I think, the journalism part, and photojournalism obviously has changed, but it's always been about, images that are seen by large numbers of people in a concentrated way, the newspaper, the magazine. Things have changed. It's not quite like that anymore. And, now, we've eliminated the middle person, and anybody can publish and ultimately be popular in terms of what the images or how many eyes are on the images. But I think that, street photography in essence is a form of photojournalism. It's capturing history that won't be repeated. And, you take a picture in one place, and 5 years from now, it's completely different. Yeah. And that picture becomes like a good wine, even better with age, and it becomes sort of a journalistic thing. But, there's street photography. For me, the most meaningful street photography is not necessarily the cleverness of the photographer, but more about the content, more about the moments, more about the humanity or the beauty in the landscape or urban landscape. I'm less attached to labels than I once was, but I understand that we have to kind of rein things in a little bit, and
we got to put them in a box. They got to be in the box, right?
Exactly.
Well, good. That's a good answer. Yeah, I agree with you. the story bit especially, and I love what you said about, a street can be anywhere. What does that mean? Street photography, right? So,
right. Exactly.
and here's the final question. I was purposely kept this conversation sort of away from gear because we're talking about passion and technique and, inspiration, that sort of thing. But I wanted to, I know you're a Nikon guy, or you were last time I spoke to you.
Yeah, still am.
You're still a Nikon guy. You bleed the black and yellow, right? So
I certainly do. Yes,
so.
yes.
What's Steve Simon shooting with these days? Have you moved to mirrorless, or are you have?
Yes,
tell us about your experience with the new Z.
Definitely, I've made the move to mirrorless. I think it was partly practical. I mean, I am a bit of a Nikon guy. I've been fortunate enough to work with Nikon, the proper pronunciation, in Japan.
Nikon,
yes, exactly. And a little bit of relationship here in the United States, but mostly in Japan. And I have been since the beginning of my career. And, because photography is something that is so special to me, I guess the gear is something that also has become, special. I've never really strayed from the Nikon brand, but in the end, I know it doesn't really matter. It's just a tool. I went to the mirrorless. I was very excited about it. I knew that it was going to be good, mainly because I had a bit of an inside track on the Nikon DL, the little camera that never came out. I was working on that, and I used that camera, and it was really kind of cool. But I knew that when they were going to go mirrorless, it was going to be good. And so I got as soon as I could, I picked up my Nikon. And I'm from Canada, so I say Z or Z. I don't know what the proper pronunciation is, but, the Z7.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I mean, for me, it's been I haven't sold my DSLRs because, I have my D850 and D5. They're incredible masterpieces of cameras, I think. But the new mirrorless system has a lot of advantages, and I'm sort of altering my way of shooting. I love the articulating screen that I could touch, focus, and shoot. Silent mode, although I'm sort of careful not to use it in artificial light because of banding issues. And the mechanical shutter on these mirrorless cameras is so quiet compared to my DSLR that for me it's not an issue at all.
Yeah.
But the fact that I can carry around a smaller kit is very great for me. And I've always known, and I've played with Leicas, and I know that having a smaller camera on the street can be an advantage. It's just you're a little bit more under the radar. And with the mirrorless, it allows you to do that. The focus systems on the new Nikons are a little bit different from what I'm used to as DSLRs, but I've learned to use them properly. And they're still very fast for me, even in sort of action situations that I've been in, and I've been really, really kind of happy with it. And I'm excited for the future. I wonder if the new professional cameras, that Nikon with the Olympics coming up in 2020, whether the D6 professional is going to be a mirrorless or a DSLR. I think there's the jury's out on that. I don't know how you feel, but I'm actually hoping it might be a mirrorless.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't have an inside track, but I feel like we're still in this overlapping, period right now where mirrorless has a ton of advantages, but in certain situations, DSLRs still outperform mirrorless, right? And if you're in a mission critical situation where you've been relying on DSLR and those capabilities, and like it's the Olympics, then I don't think we're quite there. I don't know, this is just me thinking, but I don't think we're quite there yet for the people that are shooting for Nat Geo or whomever to switch over 100%. If I were them, I'd bring my DSLR because that's what I know, but I'd also have a mirrorless in the bag, to shoot and say, oh, okay,
No, that's the sage advice, because in my experience, throughout my career, the camera that I was most comfortable with and knew best was the one that enabled me to get the strongest images. Because, as I often say, the technical stuff is really kind of the easy part of photography, but there's no real shortcut around it. You have to sort of nail and understand what you're doing so that you can get past it to the million other things that are more important. But you're right. I mean, the fact is, from a pragmatic company point of view, it seems the future is these smaller cameras. And, the fact that with the converter, all of these old Nikon lenses, be it huge 400 2.8s or or small fisheyes, they all attach and work really well. They haven't skipped a beat in terms of focus speed or anything. So I think, if they wanted to, they could have a mirrorless form factor for a professional camera, if that is the future. And we'll have to wait and see. I just think that Nikon's always been a pretty conservative company, but they've surprised us over the years, and I think that'll be the big tell whether the D6 is going to be sort of a mirrorless hybrid or a DSLR or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, love it. Well, Steve Simon, once again, here's your book here. You may have seen this book. I'm not sure.
Yes,
it's called.
Yes.
Let's put the camera on me so we can see it. There it is. It is called The Passionate Photographer, Dream It, Be It, A Proven 10-Step Plan for Success by Steve Simon. Steve, what's next? This book is done. It's, it's revised and republished. What's the next step for Steve Simon?
Well, I've got a lot of projects on my plate. The question is when I will have that one thing time with my 4-year-old Sawyer. I blame everything on him, of course. Crazy about him. But it's really finding the time on things. But I really, with the book coming out, hopefully there'll be some people that are new to the book, and I know there are some people that have the old book that will want to kind of refresh and maybe sort of get re-inspired to a certain degree. I'm hoping that to work on. I'm always a little late to the game, but I've done these courses with lynda.com. I wanted to do a passionate photographer sort of video university master's type program.
Yes, do it.
So yeah, that's definitely on my plate, and so we'll see kind of how that's going to evolve, and a few other things, because I'm doing workshops in street photography a lot. I thought maybe a street photography workshop, a book, might be in order if I could, if I have enough great content to put in there and things to say that are maybe different from this, I will do that. And, from a personal standpoint, I've been working on conventions, political conventions, since 2004.
I remember that one shot you did. Yeah.
Yes. And in 2016, I thought that might be my swan song, with those conventions. But the reality is, I have all this work, and I think in 2016, I literally shot over 40,000 frames. When I talk about going through a volume of work, I definitely sort of live that thing. Maybe a little too many, but don't want to miss the moment. Yeah. So I have all this work, and I'm thinking maybe in 2020 I will sort of revisit it once more, and then finally put out a book on that convention work, depending how things are going and if we're still around by then.
Oh, exactly.
Hopefully the political system will sort of
you may be documenting the beginning of the end. I don't know, Steve.
Exactly. Whatever crises we're in now, we'll see. Hopefully we'll get past
I know.
that.
It's so sad. So sad. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on. I think those are all excellent ideas. I want to extend the invite out to you, as I will for a couple of the old band members, to come back on the show and get the band back together.
Yeah,
you got to do it.
It's been too long. It's just great to be back talking with you, and definitely I'm gonna set some time across. Maybe little guy Sawyer will be on the show too, depending on when it's being taped.
Excellent. But just. I know you're up there a little bit, but we don't use tape anymore, Steve.
Okay, yeah, things have changed. I think I'll have to revise page 78 in the book, but
I love it. I always give people crap when they do that. You're like, "Hey, I'm videotaping you." I'm like, "There's no videotape in your phone, man."
Oh, good. Yeah, okay. I thought it was a complicated camera obscura that you use, but it's all confusing.
It transmits to a server that then records the videotape for you.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
Well, cool, man. Steve Simon, best of luck in everything you're doing. We'll definitely stay in touch and get you on an upcoming episode of TWiP. And folks that are watching this, we'll put links to the book and your site and workshops and all that stuff in the blog post and also in the YouTube video for this episode. So,
awesome.
Steve Simon.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome, man. All right, go enjoy your New York City afternoon, man.
I will do. It's beautiful out here, so I think I need to get to B&H really quickly.
There you go. All right, Steve Simon. Take care, man.
Take care.
This is TWiP.